Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the Big Sick policy in Nicaragua. As you recall from our previous classes, we've been talking about the United States and its policies within the region. Now, just to recap, the Big Sick policy is basically a policy whereby the United States was looking at the Latin American countries and was telling Latin American countries that because they could not manage their affairs properly, many European powers were coming in. So what they were saying is that if Latin American countries could not manage their affairs properly, the United States would come in and take control of the situation. So today we're going to be looking at how this big stick policy was being utilized as an excuse or as a method to get into the internal politics of Nicaragua. Again, bear in mind that the United States, in their view, in the American worldview in this case, they're looking at Nicaragua and they're considering that Nicaragua is not managing their affairs properly. So today we're going to be looking at two things. One, we're going to examine how the case of Nicaragua is an example of the big stick policy in Central America. And two, we're going to break down the confrontations between President Zelaya and the United States administration. Again, what we're going to be assessing is how is it or why is it that the United States is intervening in Nicaragua and how that is an example of the big stick policy. So let's move on. One of the things that is very important to understand whenever we talk about the United States and Central America itself is that the United States had since the 1800s, and actually we could even go back to the 1700s, wanted a connection between the Caribbean Sea and Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. They had explored different areas, and one of the things that they wanted was to create a canal that would connect, or that would go right across Nicaragua from Greytown, as you can see here, which is right there, way up to Brito, which is right over this side. So the canal, which was something that was proposed in the 1800s, was something that the United States always came back to. And in this case, in the 1800s at this point, and early 1900s at this point, sorry, you see that the United States is now thinking about establishing this particular canal. Actually, the United States comes into Nicaragua and the United States begins to give proposals about the construction of this canal. But there was something that was very important about this, that since the United States was giving most of the investment for the construction of the canal itself, the United States wanted full control over this canal. And that was not necessarily something that the president of Nicaragua wanted. Jose Zelaya, who was the president of Nicaragua at this point, began to put some restrictions as to what the United States could do in Nicaragua. And he had all the right to an extent, because they're going to be using his land, they're going to be using his resources, and for that reason, he thought that he could or he should put particular restrictions on the United States. However, the United States basically wanted to create this particular canal and establish themselves, or establish this canal as property of the USA. And that is where the clashes began to happen, because Zelaya was saying, look, I am willing to allow you to construct that canal, but you cannot have full control over it, because obviously it's in Nicaraguan land, so I need some sort of control over it as well. So let's move on. Let's see what happens. Obviously, you see that all of this creates friction between the United States and Jose Zelaya. And what the United States does, and just to recap here, is that once the United States notes that they cannot gain full control to their advantage of what the Nicaragua Canal would have been, the United States decides to go to Panama. And at this point in the early 1900s, Panama is now seen as a way where they could do this canal. However, Zelaya was not happy. So Zelaya was stating, look, you wanted to come in, establish this canal, you wanted to have full control over this canal. So guess what? I still want this canal to happen. The only good thing now is that you are out of the picture, so I'm going to do this canal by myself with the support from some other world power. And it is at this point that Jose Zelaya begins to invite other world powers. So they begin to say, hey China, hey USSR, hey Japan, if you want to come in man, let's build this canal. And he was basically attracting this foreign investment for this canal to be built, and he was going to be giving some sort of control over this canal to the Europeans or to any other world power. And guess what the USA did? The USA, being as jumpy as they are, were saying, oh no, you can't do that, man. What do you try doing in this area? I try kick out all of these Europeans and you try bring them in? No man, this can't work. So guess what happens? This is where you have Zelaya and the United States clashing views. And all of a sudden, now the United States looks at Zelaya as an inefficient leader. And now the United States comes back and says, look, Zelaya, you are not being able to manage your affairs properly. So you are not managing your affairs properly. And they began to go all around the Latin American region, particularly all throughout Central America, saying, look, Zelaya is a dictator. He's not a democratic leader. He does not know how to manage his affairs. Look, he wants foreign investment into his territory. He wants foreign control into this territory. And that is when the United States begins to paint a really bad picture of Zelaya in the region itself. And within this particular hour or discussion or friction is when they begin to say, look, Zelaya is not only a threat to Nicaragua, now Zelaya is also a threat to Central America, because he's not even looking at the well-being of his own people. How the hell will he be looking at the well-being of Central America? And it is at this point where Theodore Roosevelt begins to go all throughout Latin America and Central America to garner some sort of support against Zelaya. Eventually, the United States sends in some of their Marines. The United States begins to have some sort of pressure to remove Zelaya. And in 1909, after foreign businesses in the Mesquisha sponsored a Conservative Party revolt, Zelaya eventually decides to resign from his post. And the United States, take a look at this, right? So now Zelaya is out of the picture. There's a lot of instability in Nicaragua. And the United States comes as the savior, quote unquote, and the savior, to bring a bit of stability in Nicaragua, place a government that they basically elected because they conditioned the election a lot. And they sort of wanted to stabilize Nicaragua. Now, what I want you to understand from this is that the United States created all of this problem. Now the United States is coming, quote unquote, to save Nicaragua. So let's move on now. So as I had stated, the United States basically created a situation where they would emerge as heroes. But not only that, they wanted to emerge as heroes but also gain some sort of control over Nicaragua and avoid interference of any European power. So the United States came in, they placed in a puppet president, and this puppet president was disliked. And what you see happening here is that there are a lot of protests in Nicaragua. And even within all of this instability in Nicaragua itself, the United States decide that they are the ones who need to bring in peace and stability in Nicaragua. So they bring in the Marines, and way up to the 1930s, the Marines were protecting the puppet president, and the Marines were also ensuring that the United States had control of the Customs Office and the National Bank and the railroads. Now, what is important about this is, how is it that the United States, their interests, the interests of the USA, were not served? And because the interests of the USA were not served, you have the US trying to intervene in the affairs of Nicaragua itself. A very important moment at this point. And because of all of this, what you see happening is that by 1916, the United States had coerced Nicaragua to sign a treaty. And this treaty is called the Bryan Chamorro Treaty. And of course, Bryan referring to the negotiator for the United States, Chamorro referring to the negotiator for Nicaragua. They decided to sign off on an agreement whereby they declared Nicaragua as a U.S. protectorate, and they also gave the USA, take a look at how that canal is important again. They gave the USA sole rights over a canal if it was to be created. So the USA is now saying, I do not want to build it, but hell no, anybody else can't just simply come in and build this canal. That was a very important part of the history of Nicaragua. Eventually, up to 1933, the United States was maintaining control of Nicaragua, and Nicaragua eventually, loosened up. However, the United States had already intervened. The United States had already imposed what they wanted. Again, to summarize, we have a president by the name of Zelaya who did not want to bow down to all of the interests of the USA. We have the USA deciding to pull out from Nicaragua so that they would not build the canal because they were not getting all of what they wanted. Zelaya responding by asking other world powers to come in, and the USA responding by kicking him out of power.